Well, hello everybody. I hope you are as excited as what I am for us to jump right in and build out our own APIs to connect our FlutterFlow application with our MongoDB database. Now, in order to build these APIs, we will be using Next.js, right, with some TypeScript, and we will then deploy our application or our APIs to Vercel. Right, so we can host it, have a live link, and then connect to our FlutterFlow. Now, there are a few prerequisite applications that we are going to require to achieve this. And the first application that you are going to need is Visual Studio Code. Now, if you don't have it installed as of yet, please do that now. I am going to recommend that when the installer pops up, you do click all the boxes or tick all the boxes. That will be to add code to your environmental variables. Or to your path, also to allow you to open up a folder inside of code. Now, I am going to provide links in the description below for all these applications. So yeah, Visual Studio Code will be the first one. The following application will be Git. Now, Git we will be using in order to push our repositories or run GitHub command lines inside of our terminal. We also require Postman. Now, Postman is what we will be using in order to test our APIs inside of our local host. Before we have to push that to Vercel, we can make sure that all of our APIs are functioning in the way that they are meant to. We are able to create users and also to update the users, fetch a list of users, all of those. We will be using Postman before we do our deployment and then connecting our APIs in FlutterFlow. Now, the next thing that we're going to need is we're going to need Node.js. Now, we are going to use Node.js to set up a server, so the localhost server, and we'll also be using Node.js to install other packages, right? Then finally, we are going to need a few accounts. The first account that you are going to require is a GitHub account. So once you've created yourself a GitHub account using the link that I will provide in the description below, you can head to Vercel and create your account using your GitHub account. And the same you can do for MongoDB. Now, GitHub will host our repository of our project, and from there, we can import it into our Vercel in order to deploy it. MongoDB will be what we will be using as our backend, so our database, and we will be using Mongoose in order to connect to our database and create our user schemas. Now that we are done with introductions, I'm going to just jump in and let's get this project started. Now, I already have all of these applications installed on my computer, so I'm not going to do it again. The first thing, though, that I want to do is we need to create a folder. Now, I'm just going to say FlutterFlow Next.js API. All right. And I'm going to open this folder. There we go. And inside of it, I'm going to right click and there we go. I can open with code. Now, if you didn't have the option, you can always also do it from your command line or from a CMD terminal and then just use the command code space full stop. But that is something that you can do on your side. For now, we just need to make sure that you do have a few dependencies installed inside of your, or extensions installed inside of your Visual Studio Code. And the first dependency or extension that I would recommend is tab 9, right? So tab 9 is AI. It helps you to complete, or it learns from the way that you program so that it gives you suggestions. So autocomplete suggestions. This helps decrease the amount of time that you spend actually writing out the code significantly. I would, however, suggest that you always double check that the snippet that it provides to you or the hint that it provides to you is fully correct, or at least partially correct, so that when you do press tab, then you don't have too much to edit out or have to remove at all. So tab 9 will be 1. And then we also are going to be using GitHub, right? Now with GitHub, you are going to install the GitHub Copilot, GitHub pull requests. You can do the GitHub code space, GitHub Copilot chat, GitHub repositories, and then GitHub actions. Now, I do like to have all of these. If you want to know what each one does, you can have you could look throughout their documentation. This just helps you with managing your GitHub repositories and your entire GitHub profile from within your Visual Studio Code. Now, once you've installed it, you will see that you will have an option here that says sign into GitHub. You can just click on that and follow the prompts to confirm it. Now that I've taken you through all of this and we now know which extension we're going to require, let's open up a terminal. Now, if you're not familiar with any commands, you can either click on top here and say new terminal, or for me, I just like to use the shortcut. Now, if you don't know what the shortcut is, it will be displayed here for you. And there we go. Now, we are going to have to create a Next.js application. And to do that, we're going to head to nextjs.org and we're going to click on this little command here. Now, I would suggest that you have a look at the documents and have a look at the app directory. We will be using app directory in order to build our APIs. They've got some amazing documentation that really takes you through it. If you want to search anything, you can say here. So app router. So when you click on this, it will give you an extensive idea of how the app router works. And, this is if you want to deep dive into just building using Next.js. Now, we will mostly only be using TypeScript throughout this, and we won't be building any UI, so we don't need any of these UI elements. And therefore, I am just going to jump in to create our project. Oops, let me open there. Perfect. Now I'm going to control and V to paste this command, which is npx create next app at latest. Now, in order to create it inside of this folder that we just created, I'm going to say space full stop /. It's going to ask us a few questions, and we would definitely like to make use of TypeScript. We don't really care about Tailwind CSS, but I'm just going to say yes in any case. Source directory, no, we don't need that. We definitely need app router. And import alias, no. We don't want to customize that. We are just going to be using the at, right? So we're going to say no, and it's going to create our application. Now, while this is running and creating, let's head to our MongoDB in order to create our database. Now, you can click on projects and select a new project. Let's enter in our name. I'm going to call this one FlutterFlow API. I'm going to be the project owner, and I can say create project. All right, once that's done, I can create a cluster. And this cluster I will also just call, FlutterFlow API. There we go. Let's just do that. And I'm going to go with a free version. We can set AWS, and I am happy with the region that it's selected for me. So for South Africa, the only region available is Cape Town. So I'm going to leave it as that, and I'm going to create the deployment. Now, it's going to maybe ask you to complete some captcha verification. So let's just quickly do that. Perfect. All right. So it's going to ask you to put in a username. So I'm just going to say Ghost Coding and then a password. I will come to change this after this video has been completed, since you really don't want this username or password to be exposed. So for now, I'm going to leave it as such, but once I push this video to YouTube, then I will be changing this username and password. We can then click on create database user, and then we can choose a connection method. Now for us, we will be using drivers, right? So the first thing that we need to do from here is we need to install MongoDB. Now I'm also going to add Mongoose to this installation as well, since that is what we will be using in order to make the connection. So in my terminal, I'm going to say npm install MongoDB and then also Mongoose, and let that install. Now, while we wait for that installation, I want to create a new file that I'm going to call .env.local. Now, inside of this file, we want to create a URL or MongoDB URL, and then we are going to post or paste that connection string. So we're going to come here, we're going to click copy, we can click on done, go back to our Visual Studio Code, and inside here, paste our connection string. Now, I am also going to suggest that while you are here, go there and copy this out. So MongoDB URL. This is just so that we don't make any spelling mistakes or errors when we call this MongoDB URL to initiate our connection to our database. So to do that, we're going to create a new folder that we're going to call library. And inside of it, we're going to create a new file that we're going to call database.ts. Perfect. Now, once we are in this database.ts, we need to call or create our MongoDB URL or our connection to it. So there we go. We just pasted our MongoDB URL is equals to process.env.mongodb URL. All right, just like that. And we can now start creating our connection. So we're going to say const connect is equals to a sync, an async function, such, and then we are going to start making our connection using Mongoose. So we're going to say const connection state is equals to Mongoose. So import it from Mongoose dot connection dot ready state as such. Now, once that's done, we need to make sure that to see whether we are connected already or whether we are busy connecting. So to do that, we're going to say if connection state is triple equals to 1, then we want to return console.log. MongoDB is already connected and we are going to return. Now, if you want to know how that happened and we were able to auto-complete it, it's because of tab 9. That's why I said it's an important extension to have if you want to cut down the time that you spend on programming these things. So the next thing that we need to do is to check whether we are busy connecting. And for that, we're going to say if connection state is triple equals to 2, then we want to console.log MongoDB is connecting and we want to return, right? From here, we are going to build out a try and catch block. So let's quickly do that. Let's also add our catch, and we will do an error. And we're going to say console.log. And we can then say error, right? And then also give this error message. So as such, perfect. We also then want to throw a new error, which is going to be the same as this. So let's grab that and go in there. Let's see why this is complaining. Unknown is not a sign. Okay, so it's complaining because we need to add any here. So once we add error is any, then our error message there is gone. Now, while I'm here at the bottom, I also want to export default connect, right? So that we can export this connect. Now, finally, for the try block, we need to make sure that we are connected to our MongoDB and that we have a database, okay? So we are going to say mongoose.connect MongoDB URL, and then also say DB name. And I'm not going to say MongoDB, let's call it FlutterFlow DB, right, as such. And then also we want to say buffer commands is true. Perfect. Now you will see that it is complaining that there's something missing. That would be that bracket. And then also we have an error here on MongoDB. So when we have a look at this, it says the argument of type string is undefined. Therefore, TypeScript is complaining and saying that, you know what, this MongoDB URL might not be set. So it might be undefined. So all we need to do is add a little exclamation mark there, and then we are done complaining. So with that, we can save, and we have officially made our connection to our database. Now, the next step would be to create our model or models. So for part one, I'm going to create our user model, and it's going to only require or contain 3 APIs or 3 CRUD functionalities. So it's going to be our post request for creating our user, updating our user, and then fetching a list of users. So this will be as part of part one. We will then, in part two, be building out, getting a user by ID, updating that specific user, deleting our user, and then also start building out a more relational database structure where our users are referenced inside of post documents, and also our users contains perhaps a list of, all posts. And we therefore are going to do a few things, because I do want to just build out some way so that you can understand how to create the relations or inside of your database when it comes to what document relates to another document, or what collection relates to another collection, right? So with that being said, let's create our file here, which is going to be user.model.ts. There we go. And inside of it, we need to firstly create a new schema. So we're going to say const user schema is equals to new schema. Now it is going to complain here, and it's going to say that we need to import from Mongoose. So we can just say, or hover over it and click on this little light bulb, and then select import schema from Mongoose. Now that we have that, we can start building out. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say name is of type string, right? It's not going to be required. Then we're also going to need, oh, look at this, wonderful. It's giving us email, password, role, and we don't need this. We're going to do this in a different way. We also don't need to add role. What we are going to do though is we are going to add an about, right? Type string, and it won't be required as such. Then we also want to know whether the profile has been updated or not. So we're going to say profile updated is of type Boolean. Type Boolean such, and we'll actually make it required, right? Because we always want to know whether the profile has been updated or not. We can also say that the default, no need to specify default. Also, it's actually not necessary to specify whether that is required. So I'm actually going to remove that one. We do now, however, need to come and also specify another value, which is going to be timestamp, right? Timestamps will be equals to true. And with this command, it will automatically add our timestamps for created at and also our updated at. Now that we've done that, we also now need to create the user. So const user is equals to models dot user and or model user schema, right? Now it's going to complain here, so all you can do is update import and again update import. Now if it doesn't give you the update import for this model, you can just come and add it here. So model as such, okay, and there we go, it stopped complaining. We can then also say export default user as such. Perfect. And we've officially created our user. We now can create our user using an email and password. We can have our name and we can have an about section and also a profile updated section. There we go. Okay. Then finally, now that we've done that, we can start building out our first API. Now to do that, we are going to have to create a new folder. And in Next.js, when using the app router or the app directory, each time that you create a folder, it adds to the path inside of your URL, right? So if I say API, oh, let's do this first, right? I'm going to leave this as API. And I am actually just going to add in a quick page.tsx in here. And this page.tsx, I just want to say RESTful. Okay, it doesn't want to add that. That's weird. So ES7. There we go. Okay. Don't know why these snippets weren't installed, but let's just install them all. Perfect. We can now go in here, and now I should have RESTful. I'm just going to call this API page, and then we're going to say perhaps, h1. Oops. Just so I can explain how these paths work. This is the API page, right? I'm also just going to remove maybe all of this, right? I can maybe remove all of that and then add a h1 here that says this is the dashboard. Such, and there we go. Now, if we do an npm run dev here in our command line, it's going to open a new local host, right? So when we control and click on this local host, then we can see, there we go, we are on the dashboard. This means that with a / in the URL, so if we go to our page here, right, in our local host, this app is the first one. Now, if we add a / API to our route inside or our path, then we will be navigating to our next one, which is now saying this is the API page, right? So this is all, well, the only way that this app directory work. I can also go and even add another folder in here, and this will be user management, right? The way that I want to have it. Create a new folder, which is going to be users, and also another folder in here just called user. Now, just for testing purposes, I'm going to say page.tsx and we can RESTful here, user page, and this time I'm just going to add an H1, right? So it's nice and big. User page or user path. So if we go back and we double check on our route here, if we now add to our path and we say user management, right? And we say user, then we can say, see that it says the user path, right? Okay, that just, it's very close to the side there, so obviously you can move that, but it's not needed now. So this is the only way that the paths work inside of, using an app directory in Next.js. So each time you add a folder, it adds to the path here. All right, now if you do want to hide something, so let's say I want to hide this user management section, then what I'm going to do is inside of my thing, I'm going to rename this. And I'm going to put it in brackets. So that's as such. There we go. Just let it save. Okay, this is taking slightly longer than what I would like to. So in order to explain this, I am just going to delete this entire folder as such. Yes, continue. Well, let's just delete it there. I don't know why it wants to be this difficult, right? There we go. So it renamed it now to user management. And now inside of here, let's create our first folder, which will be a user folder, and then also add another folder called users, right? So let's just add in a page.tsx here, and then RESTful, and class name, by 20, px20. Right, we can actually just say item center as well. And then say, yeah, this is the user page. Okay. I see. Yes. Yes. Okay. So now that we have that, we can go back to our connection here, and now you will see that it says this page could not be found, and this is because we now specify user management here. But if I do that, then there you go, you can now see this is the user page, even though that we have our user folder inside of a user management folder. So as soon as you put in brackets, then that user management is removed from the path, right? Even though it contains a multitude of different folders, including, a users. So if I say page.tsx here and I say RESTful, I call this all users page. And I'm just going to grab this like this. There's div here. Paste it, and I'm going to say this is the all user page. Control and save. Go back in here and you just add there to users. Then you will see it changes to this is the all user page. So that is basically the crash course when it comes to the app directory and how it works and how you can create your paths. Now, this is the same thing that we are going to do when creating our APIs. Just instead of having a page.tsx file, right, we are going to have route.tsx files, or .ts file, my apology. So the first one that we're going to create is this one, and it's going to be route.ts. All right, now inside of it, we are going to create our very first CRUD functionality, well, CRUD request, which will be a post request to create our user. So I'm going to say export const post, right? And this is going to be equals to an async function that's going to bring in a request. And oh, what did I do? There we go. All right. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to add a try and catch block, right? Because we need to catch any error that might occur. This time I'm actually going to type it out as error. And let's also not forget to make this any. Then something that we'll be using is next response, and we'll be getting that next response from next server. But I'm going to say return new next response, right? And there you can see it says next response, next server. So when that pops up, just click enter and it will automatically import it at the top of your file. We can now then add in our error, which will be error in creating user. And then we also need to add our error message, .message. So this error message is then coming from this catch error of type any. And then we also need to pass in a status, right? We need to know what is the status of our call. So this will be status 500. And we can save that. Then now for the try block, we can say const body is equals to await request dot JSON as such. And then we need to await our connection to our database. So we're going to say await connect. Oh, and that doesn't need to be a request. And then finally, if we hover over that, it's going to give us there, and we can go all the way down where it says add import from @lib.db, right? So we are importing now connect from our database connection. Yeah, perfect. So now that that's done, we need to create a new user, right? So const new user is equals to new user dot save, like that. Actually, no, sorry. We first need to, create the new user. So that could be body. My apologies. We also need to import our user from our user model. So if we go on our little light bulb, then it will say add import from @lib models user.model. Perfect. We can then go to await new user, and then we can save it. Perfect. We can then say return new next response, user successfully created, but instead of passing it as such, I want to do something different because we want to get this information in JSON, right? So we're going to say JSON.stringify, but not just new user. We want to pass in a message, and this message is going to be user successfully created as such, and then we can say user new user. Now, before we are done with this, you will see that it is complaining because there was a bracket missing. We can then say also status 200, but instead of body, we also need to pass through a header, right? And it's going to be content type application JSON. Oh, there's something missing. It would be that one. Yes. See. Boom, boom, boom. All right. So as you see, sometimes tab 9 can make mistakes, and then you have to look at where what is missing. And in this case, it was, some items in order to close off this string. All right. Now that we have that done, we have our first request. All right, our post request. Now, before we test out this post request, what I'm going to do is I'm already going to write our update request, and then we just test it all out. And to do this, we're also going to have to make, get our object ID. So when we want to update our user, we need to update that user based off of its unique record reference, right? We need to know which user to update. And to do that, we need to get the object ID from our database. So I think because of that reference, or that reason, just that I can explain this better while actually creating these API calls, let's quickly go and just test this post request, and we can go into our Postman to do that. Here we go. Now, no, don't care about that. Let's close all of these out. We are going to create a new collection, blank collection. I'm going to call this FlutterFlow users, right? And we're going to add a folder. And our first folder is going to be users folder. And then also add in another one, which is then just user, right? I like to separate my things from one another. So where we are querying or managing or using a lot of users or a lot of user data, I like to separate that from just one specific user or updating one specific user, creating and deleting. So for that reason, we're going to add a request here under user, and we can say this is going to be a post request, and it's going to be create user. And then we need to specify our URL to it. Now our URL is going to be localhost 3000 API user. Okay. Inside the body, we are going to have to pass through a few things. Now, the first thing when creating the user, I just to make this faster, don't want to waste too much time. We're going to be passing in an email and a password, and I don't care about the name, about at this stage. We are also not doing username during this tutorial, so we can remove that. And we definitely want to set profile updated to false, right? Because we haven't updated the profile yet. We have only created the profile. And the reason why I'm passing this in is that when we are going to be making these API calls inside of our FlutterFlow application, we are also going to have to handle whether the user have completed their profile creation. So whether they've added their name or their surname or about section or whatever the case may be. The reason for that is we'll be handling the navigation ourselves. So we're going to have a loading screen that loads, and then it takes us to where we need to go. It's either going to say, okay, the user is logged in, so let's go to our logged in page, or it's going to say, the user is not logged in, let's go to the sign up page. Now the user might have signed up, but they never completed their sign up process. They left the app. So when they come back, it's going to load again, and now it's going to do a test. User is logged in, yes, but user never updated their profile. So they never completed their profile sign up process. And therefore, they are then navigated to the add details page. So that's the only reason why I'm adding this in, and we can then test this out. So I'm going to send it. And then we can see we've successfully created our user. So we have an email here, which is a bunch of gibberish. We have a password. Our profile updated is set to false, and then we have an ID, a unique ID. Now, where the object ID is coming from that we are going to reference in our code is from within our database. So if you go in here and you go to browse collections, then you're going to see that we just created our FlutterFlow DB, and we've also created our first user. And this user's ID is of type object ID. So this is the unique reference for this user inside of the database. Now, to get this object ID, we're going to have to create a call for it. So we're going to say const object ID is equals to require Mongoose dot types dot object ID. Now we are gonna have to import these types from Mongoose, so we can go ahead and say import types from Mongoose. All right. And now finally we can say export const patch, right? Because we want to update our user. It's equals to request. There we go. In a sync function. There we go. Let's add our bracket. Let's also close it off. And then we can say, or start with our try and catch block. Now I'm first going to add my catch here, and it would be again of error and any, right? And then we're going to say return new next response error in updating user plus error message status 500. Perfect. All right. And now comes the fun part, right? To now firstly get our user from the database, and to do that we're going to say const body is equals await request JSON, right? Request.json as such. We are then going to say const user ID with new name, new about, new password, because we might want to update the password as well in the future. And that is it, right? Because we'll manually be handling the profile updated when making that call. So we don't need to add that inside of here. Now, it is throwing an error here for the new name, passing error expected. Oh, okay. Instead of a comma, I added a full stop. Okay, we can then go await connect. So we can connect to the database, and then we are going to do a few checks. Now, the first thing that we need to check is whether the user ID has been provided, right? So if user ID, right, is not provided, then we want to return new next response user ID is required, error 400. That's fine. Then we want to do another check, which is if the user ID is valid or not. So if types dot object ID, right, is valid, and then of course we need to specify user ID, then we want to return invalid user ID status 400. That's perfect. All right. Stab that out. Now that we have that, we also need to update our data. So we're going to say update data is equals to username, right? Sorry, we're not doing username, so we're actually just doing name, and then say new name. We're going to say password is new password. About is new about. And profile updated is true. Like that. Right, we can close it off. We are then just going to console.log our updated data, just to make sure that everything, it's our updated data is correctly set. So updated data, and then our updated data as such. There we go. Now that we have that done, we actually need to update our user. So we're going to say const updated user, right, is equals to await user dot find find one and update, right? Because we're busy with our update. So we're going to say find one and update. And we need to find it by the ID, right? Which is going to be new object ID and user ID. There we go. We're going to then say update data and new is true. Now, we also now need to return this new data or return a response if we weren't able to update the user. So there we can see tab 9 is giving me a suggestion here. So let's quickly have a look at it. It says if updated user. So if we were not able to update the user, that's why we have the exclamation mark, then we want to return a new next response which says user not found, status 4. Now, I'm happy with that answer or that suggestion, and then I'm also going to add in a return new next response, JSON.stringify message, user successfully updated, user updated user. So we want to create this new updated user data, and then we're going to pass through status 200 with headers content type application JSON. Now I am 100% happy with that tab 9 suggestion. I'm not going to even change anything there, and we can then go to create our API call for getting all of our users. To do that, we're going to say route.ts, and then we're going to import a few things, but well, we'll do those imports as we write our code. So the first one we're going to do is just the basic get request, where we will be getting all of our users, so sync. Just like that, and we want this. We can then do a try block or try and catch block. You have to add the catch as well. So we can say error is any, and then this. From here, we can return a new next response, right? From new next response, and we can say error in fetching users, right? And oops, we also want to add our error message as such, and finally a status of 500. Perfect. Just close that off too. Let's say await connection. So we need to await a connection from the database, right? And we can import that from libdb. And then we're going to say const users is equals to await user dot find. Right? And then we also need to pass in our user. We can then say return new next response. Oops. JSON.stringify users, and let's also add in our success status. So we can say status is 200, and that is it. We have successfully created all of our APIs. We can quickly go to our Postman to test them out before we deploy our project to, or push our repository to GitHub and then deploy it to Vercel. Now, to do that, we are going to have to add a request here of patch, right? Because we need to update our user. Now, I am going to just grab this URL there, going to go in here, and we're going to say update user as such. Now, for the body of this update user, I'm going to grab that values there, going to go to my raw data here, do this. We don't need that guy there. We do, however, need to pass in our information here. Now, actually, I'm not going to do new password at this stage, right? But I do want to set the profile updated to true. So we can go here and then we can grab our user ID. We can paste our user ID in there, and we can say the new name would be, let's say, Daniel, and no, Bruce Wayne, right? And then we say, I'm Batman. And let's send this away. Then we can see we've now successfully updated our user. Our profile updated is set to true, password is still set, email, ID, and then we also now have I'm Batman and Bruce Wayne. If we go to our actual database and we refresh here, then we will see that our data is also now inside of our database. So there we go, we have our about section as well as our name. Now, it's important to note that since we have specified that the email needs to be unique, that should we try to create another user using this email, then this request will not be successful. So let's quickly try it out. We're going to paste. There we go. Error in creating user, duplicate key error collection. And then it actually takes us to the duplicate key is the email, and then gives the email which already exists. Now, if you want to know that where are we getting this message from, this is what we added. If we look at our post request here, so if we go to root users and we say post request, in our catch error type any or of any, we set return new next response error in creating user and plus the error message. We can actually just do that. So error in creating user, the error message, and then status 500. So if we go back to our postman, then we can see there error in creating user, then the error code, and then the error message. Right? Perfect. It works as it was meant to. And all I need to do now is call this the Joker. Right? Let's create the Joker, and his password would be ha 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 ha. Just like that. Let's send it. There we go. User successfully created. And then let's also update this user so we can see that it's working as it should and our users or the correct user is updated. So let's add it in there. New name. We're just going to say Joker. And ha ha ha. Let's put a smile on that face. Right? There we go. We can send our request and we have it. So we can see that the correct email updated with the correct user ID. We have our password still set the same, and then we have our about section and our Joker. Right? If we go to our database, then we also should now see two users, each with their own unique ID. There we go. So we can see that our IDs are unique for each one of these users, and then the users were correctly updated. Now that we have this, we can also check to see if we are getting all of our users. To do that, you can now see that API users, it actually returned. So it actually returned both of, well, actually only the one user. So there we go, just refreshed, and it returns both of our users. So we know that our get users API call also works, but just to be sure, we can add a request. It's going to be a get request, and we can paste in this API URL, just say users, send it, and there we go. If we do JSON, then we can see our response of both our users in JSON format. So I am very happy with both of these. We can just say get all users and click Control Save or Control S, and then we can now start deploying this to GitHub. To do that, the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a new repository. So we're going to say new, and I'm going to call this the FlutterFlow Next.js yeah, FlutterFlow API. See, okay, it is available. Let's just do it in lowercase, maybe a bracket like that. Otherwise, when we deploy it to Vercel, it might complain. So let's not do that. And we can create the repository. Now, finally, we need to start running a few commands here in order to get or build our or push our repository. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to initiate a repository inside of our project. So we're going to say git init, right? And it's going to say reinitializing existing Git repository. Then we can go back. And one thing is we can already copy this git commit -m first commit out, although there is one thing that we need to do that wasn't added there. We need to say git add all, because we want to add all of these files to our Git repository. So we can then also then say, it says git add all, then we can say git commit -m first commit 100%. It added everything. Then finally we are going to do these three. Now I'm going to just copy them out and paste them in all at the same. There we go. 100%. And we now have our Git repository pushed. So if we go to our actual project, we'll now see that everything is lying here. We can now head to our Vercel. We can click on add new project. And from here, we will now see our newly created repository, which we can see just now was created, and we can import it. Let's go ahead, import it. I am going to keep the project name the same as that. The root directory is /. The one thing that we need to do is we need to come and push in our or add our environmental variables. So this will be our MongoDB connection string. So we can copy this full one out, and all you have to do is click there on key and Control V to paste it, and it will automatically separate the key from the value. Once that's done, we can click on deploy and wait for this deployment to be successfully done. Now, while we wait for this to be done, I want to quickly create our FlutterFlow project. So I'm going to open out my browser, right? I am then going to click on or open my FlutterFlow and then create new project. Now I'm going to call this project FlutterFlow Mongoose Next.js. There we go. Very long name, but at least it's descriptive. There we go. Right, we do not need to set up Firebase since we're not going to be using it. And we can just select whatever theme we want. It really doesn't matter which theme you select for this, because I mean, I'm just going to be creating a random bunch of things. I'm going to have a home page. I'm also going to have a landing page, right? We're going to have a sign up page. And then add details page. There we go. All right. Now, in all of them, I am just going to be deleting, except for the home page, I'm going to be deleting the app bars. Right. And then we can start building out what this needs to look like. Now, I do like to work with dark mode. It's just better for my eyes. But before we get started with that, let's go and have a look. And we can see that our deployment in Vercel of our project was successfully created. We can then go to the dashboard and make sure that we can visit our new live link. To test it, we can say API and then /users to see if we can return our users. Let's have a look. Don't know why it's taking so long to load. It shouldn't. Okay. So if you see that error, it is because there's an important step that we missed, and that was to grant network access to anywhere. So we can go here to add IP address. So you will see by default, it would have added your current IP address of your device. You can now go and say add IP address, allow access from anywhere, and confirm. Just like that. It's gonna take a while to load, right? There we go. It's now active. We can go back here, and if we refresh, we will then now immediately see that we are able to fetch our users. There we go. So now we know that our API calls and our Vercel project is 100% correct. For that reason, I am going to copy out, well, not with that /, I just want this part. So I'm going to copy that. And now we can head to our FlutterFlow project. We can go to API calls, and then we're going to say create API call group. Now I'm going to say MongoDB, Mongo users, right? Just like that. That's going to be this API call group name. We can even maybe make it MongoDB users, and then going to add this base URL. Now we are going to need to add some headers, and the first one that we're going to need to add, if we look at our response headers here, so if you go to headers, then you can see that we have a content type, and we have a few others here as well. Now, for a lot of these, they remain the same, and therefore I am just gonna copy all of them out. So I'm gonna say content type, right, is, if we go to our FlutterFlow project here, let's just add a header here, content type is application /JSON. All right, so that's the first one. We can go to our Postman. We can then also add connection there to it. So connection, and it would be keep alive. Add another header. This one is going to be keep alive. With our timeout set to 5. So there we go. Add another header of transfer encoding, and this is going to be chunked. As such. There is just one more that I want to add, and if we go to our headers, right, you can see that there's one which says accept. Let's do that. Accept, and we want to accept asterisk /asterisk, and we can add this group. Now we can start by adding our API calls, right? And the first one is going to be create user. It's going to be a post request with our endpoint URL being pointing to user, right? We also then need to pass in a body, which is going to be JSON. And the first value that we'll be adding will be email, right? Which will be of type email. So let's just quickly add these variables. It will be email, which will be type string, and then also password, that will be type string. So we can go in here and we can grab our email, shove that in, right? Add a comma. Let's do our password and grab that, do password. And then finally, we also need to say profile updated is equals to false, right? We can format the document. It is saying, there we go. We can now format the document and add the call, just like that. We can then do a quick test here and say the email is, say, flash clark.kent@email.com. Superman, right? And we can test our API call, which should be coming back as successful. There we go. We've successfully created the user and it came back successfully. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in our user email, right? We also want password, profile updated, ID, and user created. Then we want to save it. Now, before we actually do that, let's just also do email, password, profile updated. We want to say ID or user ID, perhaps. Say user ID and created at. Perfect. That would be a Boolean, and this we can just pass through as anything and update that. So now that we have this, I am also actually just going to add this passes data type, although we'll most likely just be handling all of this manually, getting all of that information, right? So I'm going to save this for now. And what I want to do is I want to come to data types. I want to create a new data type, which is called user record. I'm going to create it. I'm going to add in a few fields. The first one would be email, and that's going to be type string. Create. We can then do, I'm not going to save password in the application or even pull that. I'm just going to say email, name, type string, user ID, type string, what else was there? About, type string, profile updated, Boolean value, oops. Then we also want created at, and this time it's going to be a date time value. So we have email, name, user ID, about, and created at. I believe this is all that we require. All right. We can go back to our API calls, go to our user and responses and text, and we can also just do this, right? We can save. From here, we can quickly head to our app state values. And the first app state value that we're going to do is we're going to say user logged in, and that's going to be type Boolean, and we can make it persistent. We also need the user reference, which is of type string. We can make that persistent. And then we're going to say user auth user record, auth record. This is going to be data type, data type, and it's going to be user record and be persisted. Perfect. So now that that's set, we can head to our API calls and quickly add our update request. So this time we're going to do a patch request. It's going to be user, and it's going to say update user. Now for the variables, we're going to be able to update the name, going to be able to update the about, which will be string. And we'll also be able to update the password, which will be string. In our body, we can say JSON. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to head to my Postman. I'm going to go to my patch. I am going to grab all of this out, head back to my FlutterFlow, and post this in there just to, speed this up. There's one thing that I forgot to add, and that would be the ID. We can say string. Perfect. All right. Now we are going to have to remove this in order to add these in. So add in our name, add in our about, and then also new password would be password. Let's add our comma, format document, and add call. When we go to responses and text now, we can quickly go to our database so that we can grab our newly created user. So if I refresh this, we can grab this ID there, go to our value here, add in our ID, and say Clark Kent about I am Superman. And we can actually say who was his Lois Lane, right? Was his wife or love life or whatever. Let's do that. All right, perfect. So we now have updated our user. This also successfully works. We are able to make the score, and then we can add these JSON paths. So we have username, user password, user updated, created at, user about, and name, right? Let's add this as user ID. We have email, password, profile updated, created at, about, and then username. Perfect. And then we can also pass this as a data type, and let's say user record. Perfect. I do, however, want to just come here and just make sure that this about is set to be anything and update it. And save it. Great stuff. We can then now come and we can add our final call, which will be getting all of our users. And we can say get all users. We don't need to add anything. We can just run it. And it should run it as such. And then we can pass in all of our details. So we can go to password, true, 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 created at, about, and name, right? So we can then say user ID. We want email, password, profile updated, created at, about, and name. We can also pass this as a list and authenticated user record reference. We can save it. Great stuff. And we can now finally test these out in real time by building out our sign up page, our landing page. Now for the landing page, this is going to be quite easy. I'm just going to say alignment there in the center. I'm going to add in a container, right? And this container is maybe, let's do that. Add a height of maybe only 50. We can maybe say 150. border 50. The fill color can be primary. Then add some text in here. This text alignment can be in the center. This can say loading, such. Maybe make it nice and extra bold. Just add some animation so we don't just look at a loading thing here. So the first will be fade. That's 100%. Scale, no delay. Initial will be 0 and 0. And then finally we can add let's do a rotate. Let's say we're going to rotate it. Initial turns is 5 times. We are going to delay it with 600 like this. Initial turns, 0, 5. And then we can add a thing where we say shimmer, and that delay would be 1200. And do it as such. Let's see. Perfect. All right. Then we can also add a little text animation. So go in on page load. Let's animate it. And we're going to say we are going to shimmer it as well. But just shimmer it with a dark color like that. Delay will be 1,000. No, will be 600. And we'll also do that. We can say loop animation, preview all. That looks good. We also want to add an animation which is going to be shaking, right? We maybe want it to shake a bit. We can make the duration also to keep shaking. Oh, no. Just like that. 600. Let's preview all again. Okay. The shimmer. Oops. Okay. Or 2000. That's fine. All right, that's good. Okay. Now that we have this, we can start building out how our direction is going to go, right? And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a conditional action that's going to say or check whether user is logged in. So if the user is logged in, then we want to do a check here. If not, then we are just going to navigate to our sign up page, right? We can allow back navigation, that's fine. I want to add an action, I want to go up, and I want to add a delay here. Now this wait delay is going to have 3000 delay, or maybe even 3500 delay. We'll check what it looks like when we actually go up, and from here it can slide right and do that. Now we're going to do another check, and this check is just going to be to see if our auth record, data structure field, profile updated is false. So if the user did not update his profile, right, Then we are gonna copy action, paste actions, put that up there, paste actions, okay. Then we need to navigate to our details page. And we can even allow back navigation, that really is fine. It doesn't matter. I will also say this one then needs to maybe slide left and say to 50, where else we are going to go to our home page and we can slide up and say to 50. Perfect. Right, and then we can add a terminate here and add a terminate. Let's go out, go to our home page. All users will be here. I am going to add an action on this, which basically will just be updating our app state, user logged in, user reference, and auth records. Right. Going to set that value to false, clear value, and clear value. Then we want to navigate to our landing page. And we won't allow back navigation. Let's also say on the landing page that much I need to check whether we allowed back navigation. We don't want that. Let's do that. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to do a call, an API call. And it's going to be of get all users. I'm going to confirm it. And then I want to add in a list view. Now I'm going to make this column to be scrollable, primary, and enable pull to refresh, confirm. We can go to our list view and say get all user info. And grab all our users. We can pass it as a data type. That should suffice. We can say OK. And then we can start building out what this should look like. Now I'm going to say on this column, we need to add some spacings around. So let's say start spacing 40, end spacing 40, and item spacing to be maybe 30. I'm actually going to add in a text document here, which is just going to say Mongo users. Let's actually maybe make that start spacing to be only 10, like that. Go to our list view and then start adding a container, right, with a row. And this guy will also have an item spacing of, let's say, 10 each. Don't need to add a height. Well, actually, let's make it a column, would be better. Give it 8 spacing, and then start with adding a row. Then just text, 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 and text here. This will be email, and then about, name, unique ID, and then finally another row with some text in it that we would put on the very far side. Such. This guy will expand it that way. Make this maybe only to be 10. 14 is fine. This will be set to our name, so data structure field, name, confirm. This one would be set to data structure field, the user ID, confirm. Then I do want to just align all of this to the left so that I can grab this, say get all user item, data structure field, and this will be about section. And then our, okay, well, actually let's make this the about, and then we can make this email. There we go. This guy, we can give maybe a combined text, and we're going to say created at data structure field, created at, we can say datetime format, and do that, right? Confirm it, and maybe make that only also to be 10. Great stuff. Let's give this entire column, all the items are spacing of 4, so it just looks slightly neater. And then we are almost ready to test this. We now just need to build out our sign up page. Again, I'm going to put the alignment there in the middle and also there. I'm going to add some text and a column. Inside this column, I'm going to add 2 text fields. So duplicate it. And then we're going to add a button there. Now I'm going to give some item spacing of, let's say, 40. This is going to say welcome user or welcome, just like that. No, just so that we can see it looks like something. 20. All right. Let's add our email, will be in here. Outline. That. No autofocus will be needed. Keyboard type would be email, and submit type would be next. All right, there we go. I'm actually going to delete this one and just duplicate this one. And where I can come in here, item spacing, let's say 10, and just change this to be password. We can say this is a password field. Text. Next, that's fine. Okay. And then next. Just like that. Now on this button, we need to do an API call, which would be to create our user. So we're going to say API call, create user. Then we're going to set the email and we're going to set the password to widget state email and widget state password. Right? We want to add an informational dialog that should, should it not be successful, then we want to return this action output API results, and we can return that raw body text. Great stuff. Else, we want to update our app state, and we're going to update our user record reference from our action output API results, JSON body, predefined path, and user ID. Confirm. Then we also want to say user logged in would be set to true. Auth record would be set to our action outputs and API results as data type, and confirm. Then finally, we need to navigate to our add details page. We're not going to allow back navigation, and we will make it, scale and say 250. There we go. All right, I am very much just going to copy this entire thing there. I'm going to go to my details page. I'm going to paste it. And this guy is just going to be my name value. And this one will be my about value. Complete your profile like that. And just say save. Then this is not going to be a password field, so I need to go and untick this. Right, capitalization will be words. This also will be text, and capitalization would be words. Sorry, this would be sentences. There we go. Right, we can then just click on save, and instead of creating user, let's remove this, otherwise it's just going to give us errors. It's better to just always start these API calls from scratch. Otherwise, FlutterFlow, they don't always update it the way that it should. So let's update the user, and we're going to set additional fields. Right, let's have a look. We're going to do name, we're going to do about, and we definitely need to set the ID. For this one, we're not going to, well, let's do the password, right? We'll just be setting the password from our app state, auth user record reference, data structure field, and password. Oh wait, we don't have it. Okay, I didn't save it, so that's fine. Just going to keep it as blank. Now the name is going to be widget state name, widget state about, and then the ID we're going to grab from our app state and our user reference. Now, if this is not successful, then we want to bring back an informational dialog that says, oops, and our message. So action output API results, we want to have raw body text and confirm. Right. Otherwise, we want to update our app state. And we want to say auth user record reference. Let's update fields individually. Now we're going to do email, name, user ID, about, profile updated, and created at. We're going to set this to be the action output API results, JSON body, predefined path. Interesting that it picks up about. Did I say the wrong one? Should be type any. Let's go have a look there quick. I think I might have accidentally made a mistake there. Let's see, about, yes, I did, okay. Let's say string there, update, and the created at should be anything, update. Great stuff. Let's go back to save, update app state, update fields. Email we can set to our, that's all. Action output, API results, JSON body, predefined path, and we'll set it to email. Right, we can confirm that. Now I am gonna just copy this entire thing so I don't have to go through that entire thing again. I'm gonna paste. Instead of email, I'm just gonna change that to name, confirm. The same with user ID, except it's gonna be user ID, confirm. Paste it. This will be the about section, confirm. Profile updated, we'll set this to profile updated, confirm, and created at. Let's also set a default variable of true, created at, paste that, and then say see. So just because I now updated that API, right? I believe I did click save, did I not? I should have. Update user, responses and text, created at, I never clicked save. So update user created at, let's say anything, update, and then save the call. Let's go back app state, created at, paste it, created at. Okay, so it's not going to want to accept this created at as a data type, or date time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a custom function. So create new function, and we're going to return a date time from date string. Right, convert to date time. So convert date string to date time. We can then do this to test it. Now, what I am going to do is I'm going to come and grab this string here. Going to go back to my FlutterFlow. I'm going to say copy function, yes. And then let's quickly test it. So date string run. Can take a second, but there we go. It returned it, and we'll just be using it then as a date time, right? So let's save it. Let's go to date string, then say action outputs, API result, JSON body, predefined path, and we'll do the created at. Confirm. Then we can say no further changes and confirm. Done. Right. Let's also now go and then just say navigate to our home page. Right. Don't allow back navigation. We can say 250 and then slide up. Perfect. Right. Let's just do our custom functions. Let's check this quick. Can take a second. There we go. And we are finally ready to test this out. So let's start our test chamber. I am going to pause while I just wait for this to load. All right, perfect. Here we go. All right, so we now can see our users here. We also have our created at, and we can click on that to log out. And there we go. We are signing in. We can head to our email and say, as who will we? Let's say, I have no idea. Let's say Oliver Queen, right? I think he's also DC one, so email.com. And we can say the arrow. That's the password. Click on next. Name, Oliver Queen. I am the Emerald Archer. Right, save it. Perfect, there we go. We can now see that we've created our user and everything is functioning the way that it's meant to. Now, let's say what happens if, we restart, we are signed out. Let's instantly reload. That should have now made sure that we are not logged in. So let's see if we are handling everything the way that we are meant to. So quick restart. Don't know why it went there of all places. You know why? It's because I never specified. So if we go, we can see that our initial page is the home page. We want to set that to be the landing page. So now if we instantly reload, then it should reload us onto the landing page from where we can then do our things. There we go. I just don't know why my animation let's just do that. Okay. Text. Just make sure that it's always white. Oh, let's make it very black. Yeah. Make it 20. Obviously, you can't miss that. All right. Retry. I'm not wasting time on UI. Don't know why. Let's see. Okay. So let's create another user here. This time, let's say Tony Stark. Let's go to Marvel. So, sorry, Tony.Stark at email.com. Let's say next. I'm gonna say Tony. So Tony Stark, and I'm Iron Man, right? So let's save that. And there we go. We have our new user. I am Iron Man. Now I do want to test that. Let's say, should the user not finish the sign up process, right? Then they need to go to having to update their profile. So I'm going to say Stephen Rogers. Oh, sorry. Yeah, probably need to be an email there. Stephen.Rogers at email.com. Captain America. Say next. And this time I am now gonna refresh. So now that I'm refreshing, it should pick up like, listen, okay, user is logged in. Oh, but wait, you never completed your profile. There we go. So now we are handling that value. So Stephen Rogers, I am Captain America. There we go. Save it. And we now have our user, right? Everything is working the way that it needs to. And for part 2 of this tutorial, we'll start creating maybe a post layout. We'll also be working on getting the user by ID, as well as updating that user at ID, maybe filtering through the users to only return a specific user. And then we'll start doing the posts. Right. Okay, so now that that's done, I will leave you to play around a bit and maybe change the UI. However you want, please note that this is, I'm not going to be doing anything major when it comes to UI. This is only educational on how to build your own APIs and manage your own APIs using Next.js, MongoDB, Mongoose, Node.js, and then Postman.